Hi everyone. I'm just going to quickly explain why I think psychiatry is a form of social control to uphold and justify the capitalist mode of production. Um, Firstly, we'll have to look at an economist called Adam Smith. In 1776, he wrote what's considered the Bible of capitalism, The Wealth of Nations, where he outlines why capitalism and free market economy is the best economic system and how we can all prosper. To the Conservative Party, he's like their Jesus, so they love this guy, they really revere him. And anytime you criticize him, they'll quickly point something out like, well, you don't really understand everything he said. He also wrote The Theory of Moral Sentiments, where he says that being selfish isn't, a bad thing, because selfish people also like to see other people doing well. But the main message of Adam Smith was that being selfish is a good thing. He said that it's not from the benevolence of the butcher or the baker that we can expect our dinner, but from the regard to their own self-interest. So if you open a business and you're selfish and you want to make money, it's a good thing, because ultimately you're providing a service to the community, and we should all be selfish. It's a good thing to encourage. That's why the school system at the moment is all about people wanting a good grade, their future. They're constantly taught from a young age to be selfish. Think about yourself, get a good grade, like tunnel vision almost. And it's also their parents as well. After school, some are given private tuition because the parents want their kids to do well. Everyone's in there like a tunnel, thinking about their own achievements and advancements, and they're not thinking how this system might be affecting other students' mental health. That's why maybe some of them are self-harming and not happy in a system where everyone's totally self-obsessed, thinking about themselves, and exam stress is also making them sick. When they come out of school or university, there's no job. Some of them will be lumbered with thousands of pounds worth of debt. Not everyone will be able to handle that kind of pressure. And because we're all different, and there's a range of human personalities out there, we're not all money hungry, selfish, materialistic, think about yourself people. Some people are going to struggle. Now, if you find it difficult to fit in, or you've got problems living in our social environment, what psychiatry and psychotherapists will do is they'll uphold the mode of production by blaming you, or saying you've got an illness or a disease. Because if they say you've got an illness or disease, nothing in society needs to change, because our environment is fundamentally about inequality. Someone becomes rich and someone becomes poor, screwing people over for money. It's not about help and caring for each other. It's about being selfish, being out for yourself. And this is why I believe we're seeing a mental health epidemic. The way we're living isn't catering for the diverse range of personalities we've got out there. It's a one-size-fits-all approach. Something the anti-psychiatrists always cite is during the Atlantic slave trade. If a black slave wanted to run away and flee captivity, they were labelled with a disease called drapetomania. It made them sulky or dissatisfied. So today, if you find it difficult to conform to your really stressful environment, or you go to work and it's short-staffed and you're given a lot of work to do and they keep piling on the pressure, if you become dissatisfied or sulky, you're labelled with depression. Or if you eventually get so much stress that you end up crazy, you get labelled with a more serious mental illness. But it was never a disease, it was a reaction to the social environment. And that's why psychiatry is different to conventional medicine, in that in conventional medicine you go to your doctor, and if you want to know if you've got diabetes, he'll look at your urine, he'll take a urine sample. So urine doesn't usually contain glucose, but sometimes glucose can pass from the kidneys into your urine. If your urine does contain glucose, they'll send you for a blood test called glycated hemoglobin, and they'll see whether or not you've got diabetes. There's other diseases like HIV, the human immunodeficiency virus. It gradually infects and destroys cells in the body called CD4 receptors or CD4 lymphocytes. You go to your doctor, they'll do a test, and on the basis of a biological test, it will tell you whether or not you've got a disease. It's HIV, diabetes, cancer. They'll look at your cells and find out if you've got cancer, and then they'll give you chemotherapy or some other therapy, and they can observe whether you've got an illness or not. But in psychiatry, as we constantly said, there is no test, there is no biological test. Sometimes people like Simon Wesley, a former member of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, will say, well, mental illness is a bit like a broken leg, or like having depression is like diabetes. He actually says that. But if you got a broken leg, you wouldn't plaster your leg unless you had an x-ray to show it was broken. You need to have a test. You can't, if you plastered my leg without an x-ray, you could cause some irreparable damage. I mean, you're going to plaster my leg, but I need to have an x-ray to show that it's broken. Same with diabetes. You can't just start giving me extra insulin. I need to know whether I need it or not. But with mental illness, there is no biological test. They've been doing psychiatric research for over 200 years, and they still haven't found anything meaningful there. They just keep churning out research after research after research paper, and the reason is simple. Mental illness is a reaction to the social environment. It's not a disease. And that's why in the 1860s, the father of neurology, Jean-Martin Charcot, was able to find the characteristic plaques of multiple sclerosis under the microscope in 1860s. You have to ask yourself, in 1860, 1870, 1880, 1900, now or 2018, they've got the MRI machine, the PET scanner, CT scanner. Why can't they find mental illness? When in 1860 they could find disease with the microscope. Why can't they find it today? And the answer is simple. There is no disease. It's a reaction to the social environment. And I wanted people who are mainly right-wing, people who believe in Adam Smith and our free market economy, to accept that psychiatry is used to coerce people. Because on the Adam Smith Institute website, it says, self-interest may drive the economy provided there is a genuinely open competition and no coercion. So the Adam Smith Institute website is saying self-interest may drive the economy providing that there is no coercion. But psychiatry and psychotherapy are precisely that. They coerce you to fit in. If your personality is incompatible, you go for CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. They try and change your personality and the way you think to conform, to become like them. So instead of her explaining to people, well, not all money hungry, selfish, think about ourselves people, we need to change society for other people. No, she upholds the mode of production by justifying it's okay to be selfish, to think of yourself, to not give away your power, and to not shy away from change. But she tries to change people. You have to change in order to fit in. In our school system now, a lot of people, well, some people anyway, I can't remember if it's 10% or 8%, find it hard to sit still in school. So they're labelled with ADHD. But we have to ask ourselves, is it normal to sit down for long periods of time, all day long? Why are they labelled with ADHD? It's because society requires them to conform, to stay still, to sit for long periods of time in the classroom. So they're labelled with ADHD, but it's not a disease, because if the ADHD person was born during feudalism England, where knights and barons ran the country, or in an agricultural society, would all be jealous and praise their ADHD. Would be thinking, wow, I wish I could plough the land the way that guy does. But in our environment, it's not required, so they're labelled. It's all about social control, and that's the main message I was trying to get through on my Twitter and YouTube. Let me just see what other points were people making here. Yeah, so they force you to change as opposed to the social environment. It's all about blaming you, and that's why we've seen an increase in people with mental illness. I think it's becoming really stressful, our environment now. There's not many jobs, they're low paid. People are going crazy, but the people that do fit into society, they're so selfish that they'll say, well, they make excuses. They'll say, well, maybe mental illness is on the increase now. Maybe they were mentally ill years ago, but we didn't know, because this is the selfish response. Rather than accepting that the environment is making people sick, because they're selfish people and they've accumulated wealth and they think about themselves, they're always thinking of the selfish response and way out of it. So people will argue, well, if it's that simple, why don't they change the social environment? Well, I think if they were to give people with ADHD, jobs to do in a community, maybe in the local parks, and pay them a good wage, then people with autism will start to say, well, I find it difficult going for job interviews. I'd like a job in the library, please, or somewhere else in the community. So if we give a job to people with autism and ADHD, then the people in the prison system will say, well, when I come out of prison, no one wants to employ me. Can I have a job? So you give people in prison a job, and then all the people in low pay will say, well, I don't want to go and work for nothing. What am I working for? Nothing. It's affecting my mental health. Can you give me a job as well, please? And the entire system will collapse, because the only reason you'll go on a low-paid job, like as a cleaner or working for low wages in the laundry department, is because you've got no other option. If you've got another option, you wouldn't do it. So they have to use psychiatry as a form of coercion to force you to go into these low-paid, dead-end jobs where someone else will profit from your labour. And even Karl Marx was aware, I'm not a Marxist, but even Karl Marx was aware that work should be something joyful, something to be part of your humanity. And he was aware that businesses screw you over for money, and it's going to affect your mental health and make you feel alienated. So, what other points do we need to look at? Well, isn't capitalism the best social environment? Well, obviously, this is what some people argue. Well, maybe for some people it might be, like if you're a TV or radio presenter, if you've made money from, a quick buck from selling stuff on the internet, or you're a businessman, or you naturally fit in, then yes, it probably is. But we're all fundamentally different, so obviously there are going to be people that don't fit in, and it's not an environment that works for them. One of the analogies I used in my other YouTube video was that if you look at different metals like tin, gold, iron, tungsten, they've all got different metal points. So the tin melts at about 230 degrees, gold 1000, iron 1500, and tungsten 3,400. Now, because the tungsten melts at such a high temperature, will find the environment of the light bulb to put it to good use, because it can handle that intensity. You wouldn't put the tin in the light bulb because it wouldn't be able to function in that kind of environment. But that doesn't mean the tin is useless. The tin can be used in other things, like you mix it with copper to make bronze. You can use it as a solder to weld different metals and pipes together. You could put it inside a tin can to coat the can's actually made of steel, but you could coat the inside of the can with tin. Because of the low toxicity, it's a good metal. So we have to look at people in the same way. We're all different. We all have different strengths and weaknesses, and we need to find avenues in the environment that work for them. Let me see. Are you anti-capitalism and saying communism is better? Not necessarily. Psychiatry can be used to uphold and justify any mode of production. So if you type in Google Russia psychiatry, you're going to have lots of stories of how they used psychiatry to uphold their mode of production. There's a famous man called Mikhail Kosengo who participated in a protest against Vladimir Putin in Bolotnaya Square in 2012 Moscow. He was charged with participating in mass riots and sentenced to 4 psychiatric treatment, diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic who was a danger to himself and others. So I'm not saying that it's exclusive to capitalism. Any mode of production could use psychiatry. I'll tell you an interesting one. If you look on Google and you just Google entrepreneur fMRI, they done a study where they put businessmen's brains under the fMRI machine, and they found that they seem to use the right side of the prefrontal cortex, which is associated with creativity. This is what the study found. So, because we're a pro-capitalist country, this study will show that entrepreneurs use the right side of the brain, and it's a good thing. Maybe other people could be encouraged to use the same area of the brain. But if you were to use the same study in a communist country where they think that a businessman is evil, they would present the study by saying that they looked at the fMRI of businessmen and found that they used the right side of the prefrontal cortex, and that's why businessmen are evil. Perhaps we need a drug to suppress that area of the brain. It's manipulating data and research to convey a message which upholds the mode of production which is required by psychiatry. A hypothetical example would be like in an Islamic country, you could have a neuroscience research team, and what they'll do is they'll look at the brain scans of 100 people that pray to Allah 5 times a day, and the research will say something like people that pray to Allah have higher levels of serotonin. So they're promoting Islam in their neuroscience research, but they're not going to look at people that praying 5 times a day perhaps made them ill or sick. They're picking out and using it in a very perverse and sinister way. So there's no, to try and finish off, I think, there is no conspiracy where the psychologists and the psychiatrists and everyone's in it. It's very simple. They all believe in our economic system being the best and normal and natural. And they label people because ultimately the psychiatrist and psychologist went to university, they studied, they've got their money now and their income, and they're just, they're not doing it on purpose, but they think the environment must have worked for them to a certain extent. So now they believe in the economic system, and they're labelling people and drugging them because they think that, well, this system's like a utopia. They instead of like telling the government we need to change the economic system and make a change, they'll uphold the system because they believe in it, basically. And even if they did want to change the economic system, don't think it's that easy. When there was a Greek bailout in 2015, the Greek finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis, he went to a summit of EU delegates, and he said, you know, we want to end austerity and try to change the way our economy is handled by implementing a more growth or a different kind of economic structure. And he was told by the German finance minister, we cannot let general elections influence economic policies. So he was told that this is why he stepped down from government, because even with a general election and a mandate from the people to change the economic system, he was told we cannot let general elections change economic policy. So our economic policy is almost like an immovable force. It cannot be changed. If you don't fit in, tough. It's now a global environment of free market capitalism, and if you don't can't change, then you're going to be like you're just finished, basically. You're just like I'm not too sure what the right term would be. You're just disposable trash, almost. You're a byproduct. That's the word I was looking for. You're just that's your byproduct, because lots of people will fit in and lots of people will benefit. You know, Thomas Saar says in one of the YouTube videos, we have to ask, because in ancient Rome, when there was a crime, they often asked cui bono. It means who benefits. In this scenario, it's not just psychiatrists and psychologists that benefit. It's the businessman, it's the politicians, it's anybody who fits in and likes our capitalist system and is fulfilling for them benefits, not just psychiatry and psychology. And I think I've covered quite a lot of points here, and I hope you understand now what I mean when I say that capitalism and psychiatry, how they come together and are used to uphold the mode of production. So thank you for your time, and take care.